Hello everyone, you're listening to the Fantasy Football Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be discussing my sleepers for this season. This is going to be my top 5. The first thing that's going to stand out on this group is that there are no running backs. And this goes back to what I was saying as far as starting early in your draft in my draft episode, where I want to try and get 3 starting running backs in the first 4 or 5 picks, at least 3. So, I don't even mind getting 4 depending on how your league scoring and the depth of your league is. In a 10-team league, I really just need 3 because there's going to be running backs in free agency. In a deeper league, like a 16-team league, I'm going to try and get as many running backs as I can if I can start 3 or more, because at that point, it's going to be very scarce across the board, and then you can flip one of those running backs for something that you might need later on. But going back to my sleepers, these are going to be guys that aren't running backs. And it goes back to because I just don't believe in any of the running backs right behind Duke Johnson. Everybody else is really in a committee for sure. And or they're a backup to a starter, and you're really just hoping that starter either fails, loses the job, gets hurt, and I just don't see that happening with a lot of these guys. What that's going to end up doing for me is it leaves me waiting for a lot of these receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends later in drafts. I like a lot of these receivers that are going late in drafts. I like a lot of the quarterbacks going late in drafts. So I don't have to reach on these guys early in drafts. I can go ahead and focus on my running back, lock that up, and it's all about roster construction. Yes, I might be passing on a receiver that I really like, but that's because I'm going to get a receiver that I really like later in the draft. The first guy on my list is going to be Evan Engram. So I'm going to start with the tight end, and Evan Engram isn't really, he's going the 4th, 5th, 6th tight end off the board. So this isn't a real sleeper, but this is a guy that I think has a lot of value because I think he should be in that conversation with the other 3. I think this year he's going to finish around the same as Ertz, around the same as Kittle. I do think Kelsey's a notch above all those guys, but I can see Evan Engram finishing in that group. So if we look at some of the stats that Evan Engram, this kind of clues to how good he could be. First of all, Odell Beckham Jr. is gone, right? So last year, Evan Engram was able to play 4 games without Odell Beckham Jr. They were at the end of the year, weeks 14, 15, 16, and 17. 14, 15, 16, 17. Yeah, 4 weeks, right? So he was able to average 80 yards per game. That's not including the 26-yard rushing he had in one of those games. But if you were to take that over an entire season, over 16 games, it's going to be 1,280 yards. 1,280 yards in a 16-game pace. That's an elite tight end status, right? That's over Ertz, behind Kittle, behind Kelsey, but he's in that group with those guys. Now, you got Eli Manning, who played awful last year. Now, I've never really been a big fan of Eli Manning, partly because, as you can see, I'm a Cowboys fan, but also, I actually just don't think he's that good of a quarterback. I think those 2 Super Bowls he won, it was a lot to do with the defense. But besides the point, now they got Jones there. So even if Eli isn't improved upon last year, he will eventually get benched. Daniel Jones will come in. Daniel Jones is only going to come in if he's better than Eli. So you're typically going to get at least as good as Eli was last year or better, because maybe Eli improves or Daniel Jones improves. And this is a guy that you can get at the end of the 4th round, early 5th round, depending on where you're at as far as that goes. And that's reaching for him, because again, I want to make sure I get this guy because I think that he's in that elite caliber. If you look at Ertz, there's so many more targets down in Philly. First of all, Wentz is taking over now. You got Deshaun Jackson that came in. Dallas Goedert's going to be a year better. They drafted a high-profile rookie wide receiver whose name's escaping me. But there's going to be a lot of targets in Philly. So to say that Zach Ertz is going to have the same year, you can't say it. In Kittle's circumstance, he basically didn't play but 3 games with Garoppolo last year. Yeah, he did fine in those games, but he did better in all the other games as far as like targets and receptions and what he averaged. He was better without Garoppolo. Garoppolo might be one of those quarterbacks who's going to target some of those outside receivers, and Kittle could take a step back. This is why I like a guy like Ertz, because I think that I'm getting value there. I'm able to draft the running backs, because where Ertz is going, I don't really like any of the running backs. That's right after all the running backs that I feel comfortable starting in my lineup to start the season. That's right after they go. So I'm still getting a high caliber tight end, and I'm getting to take those running backs. So I'm having my cake and I'm eating it too. Basically, I'm getting the best of both worlds, and that's why I like where Evan Ingram's going. A lot of people are talking about O.J. Howard. I believe in O.J. Howard. I think he's got all the talent in the world, but Bruce Arians has never really been a guy that gets the tight ends involved. I do think he's going to get the tight end involved, but we've never seen it. So it's not as safe as Evan Ingram. And then you got Hunter Henry. He's still coming off a major injury. We've never actually seen Hunter Henry take that next step. And I think after those guys, there's a big drop off at tight end. So that's again why I focus so hard on Evan Ingram. But I do believe that right behind him, you got O.J. Howard and Hunter Henry, in case you start to wait on Evan Ingram and there's a Giants fan in your league and he reaches up and he grabs Evan Ingram, kind of ruins your plan. You're not really that far off when you're talking about guys like O.J. Howard and Hunter Henry. You can still go with that, and you're still managing to load up on those running backs early in the draft. The next guy on my list is actually my favorite sleeper this year, and his name is D.D. Westbrook. D.D. Westbrook, I know he's on the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of people stay away from the Jacksonville Jaguars passing game, which I think is why he's falling so much, because if you read between the lines, this guy's going to be good this year. Nick Foles is known for targeting the slot. In 2018, he targeted the slot receiver 56.8% of his passes. That's more than he's targeted the rest of the team. Just do the math. 56.8% is more than the other half, right? This is a trend with him. He's targeted the slot more than the rest of the team over the last 3 years as well, not just 2018. Last year, D.D. Westbrook was number 9 in average separation yards in the NFL, which means basically that he was able to create 3.5 yards on average from the closest defender to him when he received passes, right? Now, his quarterback last year was Blake Bortles. So, obviously, Blake Bortles is worse than Nick Foles. And if you disagree, you disagree, but it was Blake Bortles, and it's Nick Foles. I know Nick Foles, some people consider him overrated, which I would say he's a little bit overrated as well with all the Super Bowl hype and, St. Nick and all that stuff. But he's better than Blake Bortles. He is better than Blake Bortles. And a stat that we can go to right to prove it is Blake Bortles last year, there's a stat called expected completion percentage, all right? And you take that expected completion percentage and you put it versus the average completion percentage, and then you get how accurate a quarterback were you, or how accurate was the completion percentage. Obviously it's not always on the quarterback. Sometimes the receivers drop the ball, whatever, right? But Blake Bortles was the second worst quarterback in the NFL last year when it came to expected completion percentage versus actual completion percentage. It just so happens, coincidentally, by the way, that was C.J. Beathard was the worst. Blake Bortles was just above a third-string quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, right? Now, on the other end, Nick Foles, in his small sample size for last year, he was the second most accurate in terms of expected completion percentage versus actual completion percentage. His actual completion percentage was actually higher than his expected completion percentage. The only person he was below was Drew Brees. And we all know the Hall of Famer Drew Brees is a pretty accurate quarterback, right? So that's what D.D. Westbrook goes from. He goes from Blake Bortles to Nick Foles. He goes from an inaccurate quarterback to an accurate quarterback. And we've already talked about how much Nick Foles wants to target the slot. Guess who's playing the slot this year for the Jacksonville Jaguars? That's right, it's D.D. Westbrook. So this is a guy that you can get late in your drafts. It's going to work out. This is the floor is so high, and I actually think that the ceiling's pretty high as well. This is going to be a kind of guy like a Julian Edelman type that can really put up a lot of yards over the year, especially in these PPR leagues. The next guy on my list is Corey Davis. But before I start talking about him, I did leave out a stat in regards to Evan Ingram. I brought up that D.D. Westbrook was number 9 in separation yards within the NFL. Evan Ingram was actually number 1 last year with 4.4 yards of separation. So if Eli Manning was just a little bit better, basically what's that saying is Evan Ingram was just open all the time. So I'm assuming that they're going to go to him a little bit more now that Odell Beckham Jr. is out of the picture. They need to refocus on who the guy that they're going to target in the passing game is. And I think that guy's going to be Evan Ingram because of that. I just wanted to bring that up because I realized that I forgot to bring that up earlier. Let's go down to Corey Davis. Now, Corey Davis, for me, he's always been a talented receiver. Like, if you watch the Tennessee Titans, it's not Corey Davis that is the reason that he has not been successful in the NFL. It is completely the fault of the quarterback. Tennessee last year only threw for 3,255 yards. 3,255 yards? Like, Corey Davis actually accounted for 27.4% of the team's total yards. So that's more than a fourth of the whole team's receiving yards. Corey Davis accounted for that. So guys that have done that is like Kenny Galladay, Mike Evans. Obviously, guys like Hopkins are a little bit higher than that. Julio Jones a little higher than that. But I mean, that's a lot of percentage. So the only thing that for Corey Davis to be a sleeper this year or to be successful is not that he gets more involved in the offense or that he has to do anything. Marcus Mariota in that passing game just needs to be a little bit better. So I compared him to Kenny Galladay, right? So the Detroit Lions last year threw for 3,844 yards. Okay, that's a lot. Comparatively to Tennessee Titans. It's actually not a lot comparatively to the NFL. I don't know where that ranks, but it's not very high. Most teams in the NFL sit right about 4,000 something yards per season. So the fact that the Tennessee Titans only threw for 3,255 yards, a lot of that had to do with Marcus Mariota was hurt, like banged up during the season while he was playing. Then he was out 4 games in the season. I think that a lot of that had to do with why he wasn't as efficient as he could be last year. I do think Marcus Mariota is capable of throwing 4,000 yards. I'm not drafting Marcus Mariota as my fantasy quarterback, but I do think that he can make improvements upon last year, which thus makes Corey Davis a better receiver. So if we just take Kenny Galladay had those kind of percentage of the offense last year due to the injuries and trading of Tate and Marvin Jones. Corey Davis is just the focal point of the passing game, just plain and simple. He's going to be the focal point of the passing game again this season. So if Marcus Mariota can get close, so just let's say he put up the Lions numbers from last year, so 3,844, then Corey Davis, based off of percentages, because obviously Kenny Galladay had a very similar percentage to Corey Davis. Corey Davis maintains this similar percentage as far as target share and yards of the receiving. He's going to end up being Kenny Galladay from last year, which is better than he's being drafted currently. Kenny Galladay is being drafted way ahead of him. I'm not saying that I would take Corey Davis over Kenny Galladay. It's close for me, actually. It is close for me. I would rather have Kenny Galladay because I believe that Detroit is going to take a step forward this year. Detroit was bad, but I'm just saying if the Tennessee Titans are as good passing as a bad Detroit team last year, because they were terrible last year, then Corey Davis is going to be a steal at the round you're getting him. So that's not even saying that they become good. The Tennessee Titans could be good. Marcus Mariota could take a step forward. He came in the first couple of years. He wasn't bad. He's been dealing with injuries. He could be good. And then Corey Davis is a steal at that spot because Corey Davis has the talent to be one of those top 10, top 20 wide receivers in the NFL. So the fact that you're getting him so late at a bargain, that's why he's a sleeper for me. The next 2 guys on my list are going to be quarterbacks. And honestly, I like to wait on quarterbacks myself. If I'm going to reach and take a Mahomes, which I'm not saying don't reach and take a Mahomes. If he falls to you, you don't like the guys around there, by all means, I think he's going to be the number 1 quarterback this year. And if you're in a league with a bunch of smart guys or a bunch of wise guys, they're going to let Mahomes fall, and he's going to fall to a certain point. The leagues that I like to draft a quarterback in are 10-team leagues. And you might be thinking, 10-team leagues? There's 10 good quarterbacks. Why would I want to draft him 10-team league? Wouldn't you want more in a 16-team league? No, because honestly, there's depth at every position in a 10-team league. So if you can get a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you have that elite advantage over everybody moving forward. So in a 10-team league, I'm more comfortable drafting a guy like Mahomes or an elite quarterback if you think Watson's super elite, which I don't think Watson's much better than the 2 guys I'm about to talk about. But Mahomes, I do think is going to be better. So in those kind of leagues, I can see why you would draft a Mahomes, but for the most part, I'm waiting in every league because, again, we talked about how I'm trying to get running backs. And even in a 10-team league, you run out of running backs pretty quick. The first guy I want to talk about, and you can separate these guys with 6 point per passing touchdown versus 4 point per passing touchdown, but if you go 6 point per passing touchdown, I really like Carson Wentz. Honestly, Carson Wentz came into the season banged up last year. I'm not saying I throw out last year because he was good last year. He was good. There was nothing wrong with Carson Wentz last year as far as like when he played. But he missed the first 2 games. He didn't really get into the groove in training camp. He started to get in the groove and then he got hurt again. And then he missed the rest of the games. He's been relatively healthy this offseason or preseason, getting up to the regular season. He's missed preseason games due to the fact that they don't want him to get hurt. So I think Carson Wentz is going to be closer to that 2017 Carson Wentz where he was on pace to throw for 40 touchdowns, which would have been the best in the NFL at the time. Granted, last year there was a guy named Mahomes who was better than that, but he would have still been the second best quarterback in last year had he thrown for 40 touchdowns the way he was on pace to throw for in 2017. And as we talked about earlier, there is a lot of talent in Philly. Ertz, we got the two tight ends, Dallas Goedert and Ertz. We got Alshon Jeffrey. They brought in Deshaun Jackson, which I think will be able to stretch the field. They have two slot receivers with Nelson Aguilar and a rookie that was a highly touted rookie. They have one of the best offensive lines. They drafted a running back that can catch the ball out of the backfield. They brought in Jordan Howard, which again that's going to be just create balance, so more efficient there. So this is going to be one of the best offenses. The defense, the way they play, kind of pressed the opposing offense to play fast, which means a lot more possessions. So again, I think he has the potential to be the number 1, number 2 quarterback in the NFL, and you're getting him at like QB number 7, QB number 8. So like right where he goes, that's the bottom of the elite tier for me. Then you got a guy this is more of a project guy, which is Lamar Jackson, and this is no surprise. Everybody's talking about Lamar Jackson, so it depends on where you're going to draft him. But this is a guy in a 10-team league especially where I want to get him and then pair him with a guy like Carson Wentz where I feel safe. But let's say you miss out on Carson Wentz and you end up going Lamar Jackson because he's going outside the top 10 most of the time, right? So you get a guy like Lamar Jackson, pair him with a guy like Cousins, or a guy like Stafford, which they're going to put up your standard baseline. Their floors are relatively high, but they don't have the ceiling that Lamar Jackson did. When Lamar Jackson, in the games that Lamar Jackson played, I went back and looked at my league just to see the point scoring. He would have finished if you would have just, since he started, those last 8 games or last 7 games or whatever it was, he would have ended up being the number 2 quarterback in my league scoring. That's a 4-point per passing touchdown. The only difference is we subtract 3 for interception, so it kind of balances out a little bit. But in that particular format, he would have finished second if he would have, just based off his rushing. Now, he was terrible at passing last year, so if his passing just improves a little bit, oh my God, he could easily be the number 1 quarterback in the league, and you get him super late, the same way people were doing with Mahomes last year. I would just say that don't expect him to play 16 games. He's kind of tiny. He runs a lot. We've already seen what happens to running quarterbacks. I mean, Cam Newton's, he looks like he ate Lamar Jackson, and he still can't stay healthy. So I do think Lamar Jackson, while he has the high upside, I do expect him to miss games. If I'm drafting, I want a safe guy that I can play when he's not playing. But with him on my roster, I know if I can get him for the 4 weeks of the playoffs or 3 weeks in the playoffs, I'm golden. All right, those are my top 5 sleepers. If you're one of those guys that wants to draft receivers early and quarterbacks early and a tight end early, and then you're trying to find those sleeper RBs at the end, I'm gonna tell you, I don't buy that. I'm not a 0 RB kind of guy. In fact, I'm the exact opposite. I'm a 0 receiver kind of guy because I think there's plenty of receivers at the end. But if you're one of those guys, I think Duke Johnson, he's going relatively late right now. People are thinking that Houston's going to bring somebody in. I don't think so. They gave up a lot for Duke Johnson. They believe in Duke Johnson. He's 210 pounds. He's not undersized in terms of can he handle that kind of workload. So I think Duke Johnson's probably going to be the feature back there in Houston. He is still going a little late. I think that's going to change, at least in my drafts. I don't think that he's going to end up falling as far as the ADP has him. Tony Pollard is still out there as far as like Zeke's probably going to miss a game or 2 this year. I do think Zeke's gets signed, so I'm not giving up a lot. But, hey, if I don't have a running back and Tony Pollard's sitting out there, I'm starting him for 2 weeks, so I'll draft him, especially if I drafted Zeke. And then Austin Eckler, I do think it's more likely that Melvin Gordon misses more time because I think the Chargers are a little bit further off from reaching agreement than the Cowboys are with Zeke. I mean, they already offered Zeke a lot of money. It's just all about the guarantees at this point. And if they're willing to pay him that much money to begin with, they're going to be willing to move up the guarantees, especially if they end up losing one of those first 3 easy games that they got there at the top. The other guy is Latavius Murray. This is a guy that you can actually draft and expect to be relatively good all year. I don't think he's that much worse than Mark Ingram. I think they're going to use him almost exactly the way they used Mark Ingram last year. Mark Ingram finished pretty good. So if I do have a running back sleeper, this is the guy. He's still going relatively high. He's still in a timeshare. So again, I'd rather not have to rely on a guy in a timeshare the way that Latavius Murray is. But if I miss out on some of those running backs or some of these good receivers fall to me and I just can't help myself, this is a guy I'm perfectly comfortable starting, especially in non-PPR. In some other guys, another two guys that could blow up. I don't necessarily love these guys, but Kenyon Drake, I don't know why he's getting so much hate. Honestly, he's the best running back there in Miami. He's been proven he's literally a good, efficient running back. So if you just give him more opportunity, he should be able to take that. I was really high on Drake early in the year, and now a lot of people, just a lot of words that they're going to go back to that running back by committee. I mean, Adam Gase is gone, so there is a chance that Kenyon Drake becomes that workhorse. So that's another guy that maybe I went, but again, I'm not like in love with this idea. And then the last one is, and this guy's going like super cheap, Peyton Barber is the starting running back for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I know they keep saying that they're going to rotate Ronald Jones, and he's got the draft pedigree, and I liked Ronald Jones coming out of college too, but if you watch the preseason, if you watch any of the tape at all on these two guys, first of all, Peyton Barber's just better. It's like the Chris Carson versus Rashard Penny. Chris Carson's just better at everything. So, like, at the end of the day, he's going to be the starting running back. He's going to be in there, and it's going to be the same thing with Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, this offensive line is not that good. So, again, this is not the Chris Carson situation where you're going to get a top 5 guy. But, I mean, Ronald Jones can't pass protect. There was a couple of plays in the preseason where it was like, what are you doing out there? You're just letting that guy murder Winston. And with the offensive line woes that they're having right now, you have to have a guy back there who can help a little bit in the pass protection. So I don't see Peyton Barber coming off the field all that much, especially not as much as they've been talking. Like, Ronald Jones has got talent, he's got speed. Eventually, maybe, but not yet. I haven't seen anything. Peyton Barber's still the guy. So if you need a workhorse guy at the end, you just want to plug and play, or you're in a deep league and you just need a guy, that's what he is. He's just a guy. But he's going to be a starting guy. And if this offense is a little bit better, touchdowns could approach with Peyton Barber. All right, that's it for today's show. The next episode, I'm probably going to be updating my running back rankings and talking real quick about those rankings. If you have any questions, post them in the comments section. I'll be happy to respond to them. Be sure to like and subscribe to our videos. I will be posting new content weekly. Till next time, see ya!